Hi Geert-Jan,
Hello,
how are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Thank you for having us today.
You're welcome.
I'm just going to start with the introduction questions. Could you briefly introduce yourselves and tell us what your role is within Scouts Mobility?
My name is Geert-Jan. We have two people who started this company. My role is mainly development and production, and I make all the adaptations for the special needs for people. Jacobs is my colleague, and he is in production management and purchasing. Does the financial administration, stuff like that. He's more in the office.
Okay.
I'm more in the workshop.
How did Scouts Mobility start? Was there a specific moment when you realized there was a need to do things differently in the mobility sector?
We both worked for I think 15 years for major companies, wheelchair companies. At a certain moment when Sunrise Medical took over, we didn't like the atmosphere that was in the company at that time, because it was all about quantity and numbers, and we wanted to make a difference for people and listen to the people and make something that they really need, instead of making a lot of wheelchairs for people that maybe just fit only half of what they would require. And at that moment we found some investors and we started our own company, knowing the market. At least we thought we knew the market, and this is how Scout Mobility started, and it's going all right.
What motivates you personally to do this job every day?
It's a job where you help people to do what they need to do or what they would like to do. You make a difference. It's not I worked many years in the vending machines business, making cigarette vending machines and stuff like that. There was no fun in it, besides the fact that smoking is dangerous for your health and everything. But now we make stuff for people that really help them to move around, to be mobile, to do what they like to do, like the sports, which is absolutely also fun for us. And we get a lot of happy faces and a compliment. You can very easily work 7 days a week with this without getting tired of it.
Mobility often focuses on what people can do rather than their limitations. What does that philosophy mean in practice for your work? How do you make it happen?
Mainly because we very rarely say no to a question. Of course, we have the standard wheelchairs, people sitting, using their hand to drive the wheelchair, but we also have a lot of people who need special seating or even lie down. We have people who had a nerve disease, can only lie down. So we made a bed on a wheelchair. So I think we made 3 or 4 beds like that. We got a question last year from a community in Holland, where all the dealers said, we are not going to do that. This lady, had a small child, 2-year-old, and when it was a baby, she could carry it around on her feet. But then at a certain moment, 2 years is too much, the weight's too much, and she wanted to bring the child to school herself. We made a small bicycle seat for the child beside her seat. Yeah, but where other people say no, we often say it is possible. Sometimes the rules or laws or the people are against us. The users are usually quite happy with it, and that's if you're very small and you're tiny and you cannot get from the floor into your wheelchair, we make a footplate that goes up to the seat. It doesn't happen a lot, but these things are very nice to do because it makes a difference.
What makes a truly great electric sports chair?
I think the best chair is a reliable chair. You know, if the lights won't work, okay, that's not nice, but the chair always has to drive. It must take you home. That's important. That's why how we design the chairs, it has to take you home. It's durable, so it's often more, it has more strength than needed. If we have a good solution and another solution less as the first one, but cheaper, we always go for the good solution. So for us, it's mainly the chair must drive at all cost, and that's how we design it. And that's the philosophy behind all the product. Also for the sports chairs, we do have some issues because the sport is getting to a higher level, and the chairs are really, they have to be very durable nowadays. But then again, we try to improve them every day. So now durability, I think, and reliability is the main issue.
How did Scout Mobility become involved in Powerchair hockey, and what drew you to the sport?
We came involved because our Dutch dealer was already involved, selling, I think, an Italian chair at that moment. And we once saw one of the games, and then we said, we can make a chair like that. Doesn't seem too difficult for us. So we contacted him and said, we can try and make a chair if you tell us what the chair needs to be. How does it look? What's the regulations, the limitations, whatever. So we got involved. We built, I think, around 3 or 4 prototypes and tested them with one of the clubs in Holland. It was Emmen who did for the testing for us. And this is how we learned about the wheelchairs. We made a lot of mistakes in the first wheelchairs, a lot. The 4 prototypes are completely different, and still the chair is still changing. If I look to hockey, one of the sports, I think we're at the level where we say, okay, we're this is a good chair nowadays. Now we're starting into soccer, and now you can see that we're down at the bottom. We have to learn a lot. We tried several things, it didn't work out. But you see that if you talk to players, you learn about the sport. And I don't play hockey anyway. I think it's very difficult. The automatism of using the joystick for us is very difficult because I have to think about it. But the sports, yeah, we came into it, and it was started very small. I think a few wheelchairs a year in Holland, and now it's all over Europe. It's going great. We're not complaining. I don't know how many chairs, but a lot. We sell nowadays to Holland, Belgium, Germany, Slovenia, Finland, Denmark, Spain, Italy, Australia, and Canada. Yeah, worldwide, every now and then we get a request from, we had a request from somebody in Morocco, Singapore. I don't know how they get to us. What we see with the sports is that the social media is very strong among these members. Tell one player in Finland, we tell him something new, and 3 days later we get a message from Australia that he wants it like the Finnish people have. Marketing is for free, and it works very well. But it's also amazing that they share the information so easily. And that's also with APHC, what I see on the tournament is that if you make a mixed team, then you have 5-6 nations in one team, and they're all playing together as if it was one team. If you're in a wheelchair, you're limited anyway in a lot of things. But looking at sports, the team spirit that they encounter, I think that's one of the great things. But what I see when I visit tournaments, that's one of the things that I enjoy. The team spirit they have and the international contacts that they, even if they don't talk English very well or whatever language, but they talk to each other, they communicate, and they share the passion for the sport.
Warrior has become a well-known chair in Powerchair hockey. What makes this chair unique?
I think it's one of the chairs, or I can only imagine at the moment two, but it's one of the chairs that's designed for hockey. And hockey only. We tried to make a soccer chair out of this chair, didn't work out. We have to start all over again, but at this moment it's built for hockey, and that's what it's good for. We made a lot of changes over the years, listening to the players, like we changed the shape of the bumpers, which was nice for the strikers, but less for the defenders. Okay, well, you can't have everything. And we see that the level that they are playing nowadays is going sky high. Luckily, we see that Holland is a good team already because there's a lot of money involved in the sport. We see that in other countries that the level is going up. The Dutch are getting more and more difficulty to win a game. We changed a lot of things for safety. I think we made the right decisions on the type of motor, type of batteries, especially if you have larger people in the chair. Stability is one of the things. I always get scared when I see on the tournament chairs flipping over. So far nothing seriously happened, but it's one of the things that we're afraid of. If we would increase more speed or more acceleration, it gets very dangerous. As I said, we changed the bumpers, I maybe think 6, 7, 8 times already, because the impacts are getting bigger and heavier, getting more physical sport nowadays. So I would say referees could whistle a little bit more. It's not needed in the sport, I think. No, I think that a lot of players, they know how to drive a wheelchair, they know how to use a hand stick or a T-stick, and now they have to learn the tactical side of the game, where to drive, where to be. I'm always amazed that nobody uses the boarding, which is, it's there for free. You can use it, it's another player. Take a look at the sport for the next 5 or 10 years. I think it will be less impact, less physical, and more technical and tactical.
You already said something about it, but how important is it for you to work closely with players when developing and improving your wheelchairs?
Well, the most specific thing is the bumpers we changed, the shape of it, because they wanted to prevent them from being blocked by other wheelchairs. So now it's a smooth shape. It's very difficult to block a Warrior. You at least need 3 other players to do so. And even then, some teams just do it. They use 3 players to block the star player of one team. We listened to some other players there. Of course, there's always the issue of the technical side, like batteries and motors are the most critical parts on the wheelchair. We usually say you have to do some maintenance on the chair, otherwise you will not last for many years. Then again, we have players who come here for maintenance after 3 years, still have the original batteries, original motors, and we have players that visit us every 6 months and need new motors. So we're looking for a compromise there to see, okay, what can we do? Bigger motors, so that they don't have to function at the limit, but there's a little bit in reserve. Trying to make that better. The seating is at a level where it's adjustable. We have a lower backrest nowadays for people who have stability, but if you don't have stability and you're afraid of a rear impact, You want to have a high cushion. Yeah, we see a lot of special cushions made by the dealers themselves. That's why we visit the tournaments and talk to players to learn about, okay, what is good about it and what is not. And every now and then we can help them if it's about center of gravity. Some people are sitting too much at the front of the chair. If you move back, you turn easier. So we learn from them, and I hope that they learn from us.
What do you find all about the Powerchair hockey community around the world?
Yeah, well, as I said, social media is very strong. I remember that after the European Championship in Denmark, we were contacted by somebody in Uruguay, South America, because they learned about it and they wanted to know what is this kind of a chair. So everybody knows each other. There's fair play, even if on the pitch, sometimes it gets very rough and physical, but after the games it's all fair play. And also you always meet the same people. It's like the parents, relatives, everybody knows each other. And if there's something wrong in one chair, somebody has an important game to play and he can't play his own chair, then he gets a chair from somebody else. It's very easily done. Mm-hmm. And regarding the cost of chairs and everything, and everybody is very careful about his chairs, they just lend somebody else a chair. And I think that's what sport is about, have team spirit and enjoy to have fun together. And that's what I like it. And then especially on the APHC, the 2 versus 2 tournament, because the teams are very small, it's even more important. That's what sports is all about.
How would you describe APHC and the work we do? It's
a very good way of organizing a sport event. I really like it because it's the speed is very high. I don't know about players, but looking at the subscriptions that you get, it's very popular among players. And I think it has a really good future for the top players. They must be at their limit. They must perform at their best, otherwise they can't win. And if you're in a team with 5 players, you can hide, or you can maybe have one player who is at a lower level, but if you're 2 against 2, you have to be at your best to win. I'm surprised that there's nothing like this in Holland yet. And I'm surprised that like Belgium has more difficulty in providing wheelchairs to players. It's all private. In Holland there's a lot of funding for it. But in Belgium, I must say, organization-wise, there's more to do than in Holland. Holland has a good competition. Outside the competition, I don't think there's anything. There's not a 2 versus 2 or anything. And I think there's room for it.
How did you like our camp? Because you also visited us last summer at our camp. What was your impression there? Did you notice something about the players or about just hockey there or your time with us?
Well, looking at the international players that were present at the camp, it must be popular because it's not for free and you have to make time for it. Most people take vacation or whatever. They all want to improve their skills. That's for sure, and they hope to learn that from the coaches and the trainers that were there at the moment. So that's great. I think it's really fatiguing for the players, but also for the chairs, because you're so intense playing. There comes a moment, and we're trying some new batteries now, but there's a moment that if you train for 2 times a day for 1.5 hours, the batteries won't last at a certain moment. So you're at the limit of your, and that's good because the limit should be the machine and not the human. But I liked it. I think there is room for things like that. So looking at the foreign players that were there, it was relaxed. I think they like it. Plus you're there, you sleep there, you eat together, and you can mingle a little bit amongst each other. So you get even more and more contacts. I liked it.
It's nice having you there also. When someone receives a new sports wheelchair, what changes do you usually see in that person?
Well, usually they get very enthusiastic at first, depending on the chair they come from. When we deliver a new Warrior or something with standard programming, very enthusiastic, very surprised about the power, the acceleration. Sometimes they even ask, take it a little bit lower. That's why we put 5 programs in, so you start at a certain level and you can grow. And at a certain moment, once they get to know the chair, it's like when you buy a new car, you have to get used to the car. It takes a few weeks. And I think with the Warrior it's the same. You have to get used to it because it's different, it reacts different. But once they get used to it, you see that their game improves. They get more and more involved in the game, they get better, they get more confident. And if the chair normally lasts, as it should be, then they get confident they can play an entire game. But it's usually the smile on their face. First time you put them in a Warrior and they start to drive and they come back and say, wow. That's great.
That's also something we saw with the girl from Finland at our camp.
Yeah.
She was, all the week she was so frustrated with her own chair from Finland, and then we suggested to her to just try it one of the games, and she was so over the top happy, and she bought one.
So, she has one. Once we get you into the chair and you try it, and you're really into hockey, then you're sold.
Looking at the future, what do you hope Scout Mobility will mean for Powerchair hockey in the next 10 years?
Well, in Denmark, I made a promise to myself on the World Cup in Finland. I hoped 80% of the players would be in a Warrior. I'm not sure it's going to be 80%, but it's going to be close. It would be nice if we could have a big role in the hockey sport, because we like it. It's fun to do for us as a business. And there will be more international events, and it's always fun to visit them, to be there for support. So I just hope we can continue this for the Warrior. And I hope that we can also do it in Powerchair soccer, get to the same level as we get in hockey. But the Powerchair soccer is a little bit more difficult because we have some good competition coming from the US. So we have some work to do.
I've prepared some fun questions. And I'll start with the first one. What's your favorite Powerchair hockey team or even player?
I usually go for the underdog. The Dutch are very good, but they're known. Okay, that's it. I know that the Australians are coming to the World Cup this year, and they have one goal, is to win one match at the World Cup. And I think that's good, because last time the World Cup in Switzerland, they lost everything, but now that's their goal. They have a good player now from Denmark. So I hope that they really win one of the matches. I hope it's not going to be against Belgium. If there's the really good interest in the sport, and they have good support, and they have a good team around them, good staff. We see that like in Slovenia. There's only one Warrior there. Czechia has bought 4 Warriors for the national team. So I'm very anxious to see what they will be. Let's wait and see. I don't have a team, but I would usually go for the underdog.
Well, if you played yourself, would you go for a T-stick or a hand stick?
I think I would prefer the hand stick, but that's more or less because they take the lead in a game. They draw the attention. After all these years in the hockey sport, I see what a T-sticker can do. If you don't have a good T-sticker, your defense is very poor. I see the difference. What I like about, and it's a sidestep to Powerchair soccer, it's more inclusive, because in soccer, if you can drive, even if with your finger or with your toe, you can be top player there. They're all equal. But I think, I played some field hockey with my daughter. I like to do that, so I would be a handstick player, I guess.
If you could invent one crazy new feature for a hockey chair with no limits, what would it be?
Well, we have done some investigation in cooling of the engines, because we have a lot of issues with top players who really ruin the engines. So trying to find something that we could cool the engine while playing would be good for the reliability and the durability of the chair. So if I could find something there, because the rest is only a seat with wheels, and the rest you got to do yourself. So most of the chairs are not even 100% electronically programmed, so there is enough there. But the cooling of the engines it would save a lot of money for the players. If you could really play for, let's say, 1 or 2 years without any problems as a top player, that would be, I think, a great issue for the chair.
What is something players always underestimate about their wheelchair?
Ooh, difficult question. Some of them underestimate the speed and the acceleration. Some of them underestimate the braking. That's why you see a lot of impacts. I think that would be it, the acceleration and the braking. Top players can have an estimation, okay, I got to brake now because otherwise I'll hit the other person. But after now and then I see it, and it's unbelievable how they do it, but they don't touch the player. But if you don't have that skill, you will bump into the other player. And it needs to be whistled by the referee. I would prefer, to be honest, that the total speed for hockey would always be 15. It would benefit. It would be less difference between good chairs and maybe a little bit less chairs. It would be more fair.
Finish this sentence. A great Powerchair hockey chair always
runs like hell. It has to drive, always. And even if it's at 4 o'clock, last game on a Saturday, after 3 or 4 hours, it would be nice if it would still drive at the same level it did at 10 o'clock in the morning. I think that's important.
Now the last question. If the warrior could talk, what would it say to the player before a match?
Well, I think it would say, please be gentle with me, because we've seen a lot of damage over the years, and we can put more steel around it, but it will still be damaged. And in the end, something will break. And it's not allowed, it just happens, accidentally or non-accidentally. You don't know that. But I think that the chair would say, be a little bit gently with me, because otherwise everything will break.
That was our interview. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming to Scout Mobility.